This begins Com45, Section 83, Vlog Discussion 3. Today's readings were pretty interesting. Starting off with the first one, it talks about how TV represents women either too generally or the wrong way. And that kind of strikes me as interesting because ever since TV was invented, it's been used to represent pretty much everything. Objects, nature, men, people, concepts, but yet it fails to represent one of its biggest audiences, which is women. And due to that, everything about women is either too generalized where it doesn't fit with anybody, or it's so hyper-specific to a specific demographic and generation that it ends up not applying to anyone. And in the text discusses how characters often feel like caricatures, and they feel like they're forced to have this specific set of circumstances, this specific personality, and it ends up feeling forced and non-genuine. And it's a result of these shows trying a little too hard to try to fit in, or they're trying to do a little too much with these people that it just doesn't feel genuine. And the show it mentions mostly about is Girls. Girls is both a critique on the world, but it's also a critique of itself. Girls shows how most of the modern world these days relies on nepotism rather than hard work. But in that way, Girls also fails to recognize and capture diversity. As it said inside of the reading, Girls only speaks to a specific demographic within a specific generation, and it doesn't really represent anything. And as many people pointed out, it also speaks to the creator's experience, because this is a story written by the creator, and it's speaking from her experiences as a girl. So it's not something everyone can relate to. Similarly to our discussion question about experiences and stories, not everyone can relate to them, but they can be used to help others feel included. But in the end, not everybody can relate to them. And overall, I think it's just a reminder and a criticism of how many people live different lives separated by race or class. The second reading talks a lot about what they call the American nightmare, and it's basically when American media seems to have a huge obsession with apocalyptic scenarios and world-ending events. Personally, that's not bad. I really like those types of media. It really speaks to me as a boy to just be in a zombie apocalypse and just kill zombies. It's something I've always wanted to do. This American nightmare is contrasted with the American dream, which most people just chalk up to be, you have a loving family, you got a well-paying job, you have a nice car, and you have a pretty nice house. But this American dream only lasted up until the 21st century. And that's when all these movies about the American Nightmare, all these zombie movies, for example, The Walking Dead, it's ironic. But due to that, there's also a huge emphasis on zombie culture and a lot of post-apocalyptic scenarios. And I feel like that's slowly becoming what America views to be the future of America, because it just seems like that's where we're headed, and nobody really talks about the American dream anymore, as it's not really achievable by today's standards. But I also feel like the post-apocalyptic media and zombies is also a criticism on our modern government, because in a lot of those shows, the government often is the first to fall. And I think that just speaks to how much people trust the government. They don't trust it at all, to the point they wish it would be gone, so then they could focus on their self-reliance and how they would personally live out their own lives, not under the watch of the government. It's also I feel like it's also a bit of a commentary on how kids need to toughen up in this modern world, and nobody's going to be kind to them, especially not the government. And yeah, yeah. And finally, the last one talks about the history of television and how a lot of today's traditional television is being replaced by streaming media, which I've seen a lot. Before it used to be Netflix and mostly just Netflix, but now I see HBO Max, Hulu, Hulu Plus, Netflix still, Apple TV, a whole lot of streaming services, and I don't really see anyone watching TV anymore. But I also feel like it's kind of like I guess I could use the word symbiotic. It's kind of like a symbiotic relationship. Streaming media requires viewers to exist, and for the viewers to keep using the streaming media, they have more conveniences, have more shows on the streaming media, which causes more viewers to want to use streaming media, which then brings them up to a higher level, and that decreases the importance of traditional television, which the decrease of that will increase the amount of streaming media everyone will consume, and this will keep going up to the point where traditional TV will just be too much to maintain and it'll disappear. And I think at that point, streaming media is going to be so popular, but they know that they don't have any competition, that it's going to become a sort of monopoly, a kind of like a capitalistic stunt, where then they'll have control of like media. And I think that's just the future we're heading towards right now, and it's not really a good future. It's a strange cycle, but that's the way I see. That's the way I see how the text describes the modern streaming services and traditional TV.